Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello everyone, this is Jyoti Sharma and today we are going to start with the introduction of history. Introduction to history, when, where and how. In this chapter, we are going to deal and understand about when, where and how we got to know about medieval Indian history. So the very first topic of our chapter is terms for Indian subcontinent. So first of all, we will understand the meaning of subcontinent and continent. As you can see on my screen, there are two maps. On the left-hand side, there is 7 continents map and with its 5 oceans. On the right-hand side, there is a map of India, basically specifying or pointing out India. So we are living in India. India is not a continent, it's a subcontinent. So then what is continent? You see here in the left-hand side image, there are 7 continents: North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, Antarctica. Among these, you can see the Asia. And here you can see the demarcated line. This is India. So basically, subcontinent means the part of continent. Continent is this huge landmass. And within this landmass, there are small countries. So they are not continent, but they are subcontinent, means part of the continent. So this is the concept of Indian subcontinent, means why we are calling it as a Indian subcontinent. Now we will understand that really this India was the same India during the medieval time period. No, absolutely no. It was completely different. Today's region or countries, neighboring countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. This all was under the one territory, which we are calling today as India. And this is the time period of medieval Indian history, when these all countries of today's time were integrated together. And there was no demarcated lines between them. This was all under a single ruler or having a different rulers within a specific period of time. But this all considered as Hindustan during the medieval time period. Now, terms for Indian subcontinent. The name which we are calling today as India was not the same name which the people used to call it during the time period of medieval Indian history. So let's see how different people around the world term the subcontinent as different names. First, when Parsis, when the people from Persia came to India, they understood, they analyzed that India, basically they confined India only up to this region, which was mentioned in Rig Vedic time period also, in Rig Veda also, that the area which is near 7 rivers, which was Indus, Jhelum, Ravi, Chenab, Beas, Satluj, and Saraswati. These are main 7 or prominent 7 rivers, which was mentioned in Rig Veda also. So the Parsis assumed, they perceived this perception that the area which is near to these 7 rivers is basically what we are calling as Sapta Sindhu. Sapta Sindhu means the land near 7 rivers. Sapta means 7. So Sapta Sindhu means a land which is near to 7 rivers. So from there, the term has derived as Sindhu. So Sindhu, then next, it was derived into India. So this is how the name of Parsis or the Persian people gave the origin of the term which we are calling today as India. From Sapta Sindhu to Sindhu and then Sindhu to India. Then Greeks and Roman came, and in the same context, they called this subcontinent as Indos. After that, Yun Zhang, a very, very famous Chinese traveler, he visited to India and he gave the name to the subcontinent as Moon or Yin Tu in his own language. After that, during the medieval time period, when Delhi Sultans, Mughals came to India, they gave this region their name as Hindustan. So Hindustan was not confined only up to today's India. It was covering present day Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal. 6 countries all together were used to considered as Hindustan. And when the Britishers came to India after 18th century, they derived the name India to denote this subcontinent. Now let's move to our next topic, which is period of history. Now, period of history, here in this year, we are going to study about medieval Indian history. As you all know, Indian history is divided into 3 parts. It is ancient Indian history, medieval Indian history, and modern Indian history. As you can see on my screen also, ancient, medieval, and modern. These 3 are categorized into different parts. Ancient Indian history, we have already done in our 6th standard. Medieval Indian history is what we are going to deal this year. Modern Indian history, we are going to deal next year, means in 8th standard. So let's see what is medieval Indian history, what we are going to deal within this time bracket. First of all, let's understand the meaning of medieval. Medieval means middle age, something which is in between of ancient and modern, means old and new. So something which is in between of it. When we come to medieval Indian history is starting from 8th century to 18th century AD. So medieval Indian history's time bracket is from 8th to 18th century AD. But further on, the historians have classified it into 2 parts. Now, medieval Indian history is also divided into 2 categories. First is early medieval Indian history, which is starting from 8th century till 11th century. And next is late medieval Indian history, which is starting from 11th century to 18th century. When we talk about early medieval Indian history, there we saw the emergence of small regional kingdoms, like for example, Palas, Rashtrakutas, Pratiharas, Rajputs kingdoms were there. So these all come under early medieval Indian history. When we talk about late medieval Indian history, the first and the very prominent one comes, that is the Delhi Sultans. Delhi Sultans, after that, the Mughals. So these 2 main Muslim emperors or the dynasties or the empires, it covers the late medieval Indian history, which is starting from 11th century till 18th century. New historical trend. So historical trends is basically the changes, the developments which took place into the society in a certain or a specific period of time. So here in this chapter, as we are studying about the medieval Indian history, we will understand that what changes, what development took place during the time period of 8th to 18th century in India. First, we will look into the society, that what all historical trends has been introduced during this time period into the society. First, we saw the fusion of Hindu and Muslim culture. As we all know, the rulers, specifically in the later medieval India, they got migrated or they came from the Central Asia to Indian subcontinent. India was a land during that time with a proper Hindu culture. There was no Muslim or no Islamic religion introduced in India before the coming of these Islamic rulers. And it was the very first time when they came to India, they introduced this religion, they introduced different culture into this land. So the people who are living here in India happily and peacefully accepted the rulers who came from Central Asia, and vice versa. The people who came from vice versa also adopted the culture, the people of Indian subcontinent. They both got amalgamated with each other's culture. They both got mixed up with each other's culture, and they lived in a peace and harmony for centuries and centuries. Even today, we can see the traces, we can see the evidences of this mixed culture in our daily lifestyle. Whether we talk about cuisine, whether we talk about our attire, in everywhere, we see the fusion of Hindu and Muslim culture in our life. When we talk about the second point of the society, that is the development of Urdu and Hindi. So development of Urdu and Hindi, basically during the ancient time period, as we saw that there was Prakrit, Pali, and Sanskrit language. When we talk about the Hindu culture, when we talk about the Hindu religion, people speak more Hindi language, Prakrit language, Pali language, and Sanskrit language. But with the coming of medieval India, we saw that with the coming of new people into the subcontinent, they bring their own language. And again, with the mixing up of the previous one and the new language, something new came out during that time. So that is the pure case of Urdu, where Hindustani got mixed up with Persian language. And after that, the new language was introduced into the subcontinent, and that was Urdu. So Urdu was basically the fusion or the mixture of Hindustani with Persian language, because the ruler who came from Persia, these rulers who came from the Central Asia, basically, they bring Persian language with them. And that is why we will see that their official language was Persian, but it impacted over the Indian society. And Persian language influenced to make or to develop a new language, which was the Urdu, Persian plus Hindustani. And the same way, Hindi language also got its new form during this time period. With Hindustani language, some modification, some changes. After that, new elements got added up into that language, and it came out as a new or the newly, a born sort of language, which was Hindi. Now, when we look into the political historical trends, we saw the stability for many centuries. India, during the time period of early medieval Indian history also, and even the later phase of ancient Indian history, we saw a lot of political instability, because there were small regional kingdoms which were rising up, and there was no central authority. It was only and only after the coming of Muslim rulers into the subcontinent who brought the central authority into the subcontinent. And after the coming of Delhi Sultans, Mughal Empire, the entire subcontinent, excluding the part of South India, entire subcontinent got its centralized and uniform way of ruling standards. So that this brings, of course, the stability brings development. The stability brings the urbanization, the development of urban cities, more development of urban cities. So this was the political historical trends. Next, when we look into economic growth, as in the previous slide, we have already covered that growth of cities and trade. Now, how this growth of cities and trade took place? Because of the political stability. So this will naturally comes in economic factor also, that there was a growth of cities. New cities emerged during the time period of medieval Indian history, and the trading system got very, very strong during this time period, because these people are coming from Central Asia. So here now it is not only confined only up to India. They were having good trading network with other parts of the world also. Second, coming of European countries. So coming of European countries, the first country which came to India was Portuguese. Vasco da Gama first time came to India in 1497. After the discovering of India by Vasco da Gama, first Portugal set up their colonies over India. After basically colony. So first colony, which was set up by Portugal, Then French came, Dutch, and then the Britishers. They all have set up their different colonies over the different parts of Indian subcontinent. And why they have set up their colonies? Because the reason was very clear. India was rich for its resources, whether we talk about resources like textile and spices, or we talk about the human resource. European countries were already looking for a market where they can get a good human resource also, where they can get a population also, and from where they can get a raw material also. So India became very good hotspot for these European countries. So once the European countries came to India, they also left their impact over the Indian subcontinent. Today also, if you will go to different parts of India where these colonies were there during the time period of medieval Indian history, today also you'll see the impact of these countries' culture over that area. If you will take example, if you will go to Goa, you will still see today the Portuguese culture existing over that land, where the Portugal ruled for many years. Is same in the case if you will go to Puducherry, you will see the influence of French culture, because the French has set up their colonies in that area. So this is how the European countries have also impacted over the Indian society, and of course they have contributed in the development of economic growth of India, because the trading system has started. So trade with India, with the rest part of the world, was introduced only after the coming of European into the subcontinent. Then there was a use of well-minted currency. Use of well-minted currency as in there was a proper standardized form of currency which used to circulate during the Delhi Sultans and Mughal time period. There was a very standardized form, very uniform form, where the ruler basically issued their own coins, and that was very well minted. Now let's look into the next factor, that is the religious historical trend. When we look into the religious historical trend, we saw the emergence of Bhakti and Sufi movement during this time period. Bhakti movement clearly indicates the Bhakti saints who were the devotees of Hindu god, and Sufi movement indicates the devotees of Islam, Allah, because in Islam there is only one God, which is Allah. In Hinduism there are multiple gods, so that is why that depends that the devotee is worshipping which god. So like this we can see the emergence of new movement, which is Bhakti and Sufi movement. What was so common between them? The common thing between them was they both believe in peace and harmony among the human. Peace and harmony among all the human beings was the main purpose of Bhakti and Sufi movement. They do not believe only in idol worshipping, but they believe in the worshipping, in the devotion of God through love. Through love, how they used to express their love? They used to express their love through singing, dancing, but not including any other person as an intermediary. They used to connect themselves with a God directly through various forms. Historical sources. Now, as we all know that historical sources are divided into two parts, that is literary sources and archaeological sources. Archaeological sources consist of monuments, coins, and inscriptions. And these three categories, which we consider under archaeological sources, plays very crucial role to understand about the past. First, we will look into the monuments. Monuments is a type of structure, building, whether it is a tomb, whether it is a fort, it is a temple, or it is a mosque. Every monument, every architectural structure comes under the monument category. To which architecture we can consider it as a monument? Any architectural structure which already have completed 100 years, to that we can consider it as a monument. So when we will look into medieval Indian history, there are so many monuments which gives us a very good insight about the time period of Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire, as well as the regional kingdoms of that time, like the Rajputs, Rashtrakutas, Palas, Pratiharas. So when we, let's see on the left-hand side of the video, where we can see Qutub Minar. On the right-hand side, there is a Red Fort. Both are in New Delhi. Like this, there are number of monuments which are in the northern part of India during the time period of Delhi Sultans and the Mughal Empire. Now, these monuments are important. Why? Because it tells us about the history of that time. It tells us about the expansion of the ruler, how powerful ruler was, how authoritative was his administration. So architecture basically was to signify, to exemplify the power of the ruler, how powerful he was or how authoritative he was. So like that, we can see number of mosques also, number of religious temple also, which clearly indicates that the Hindu and Muslim culture was both growing together in this, on the same subcontinent. Now let's look into the coins. Coins, another part of archaeological source, is very, very important source of archaeological history. Now, why it is important? Why coins are important source? Coins tells us about many things. First of all, if you will look into the coin, first we see out of which metal it was made. The metal clearly indicates the economic dimension or the economic status of that time period. If the coin is of gold, it clearly indicates that the time period from which we have contained that coin was very prosperous. If the metal quality degraded into bronze or silver, then it indicates that the economic growth was not that much prosperous, what we saw in the gold coin. Secondly, the time period of the ruler, it was always mentioned in the coin. So the coins are very important to understand about the time period of ruler also, the economic condition of that time period, and coins also played very, very crucial role to know that till what extent the trade was flourishing and trade was widespread. So in the Indian subcontinent, we have found the evidences of Roman coins that clearly indicates that the Indians were having trading relationship with Romans. And the same thing which we can see in the internal trade also, it clearly indicates that the coin which belongs to a specific ruler, if we found the evidence of that coin from different parts of the subcontinent, that clearly indicates that the entire subcontinent was having internal trading relationship with each other. Now we come to inscriptions. Inscriptions, another important archaeological source. As you can see on my screen, on the left-hand side, there is a Qutub Minar, which is in New Delhi, and right-hand side, Bada Gumbat, which is in Lodi Garden. You can see there is a beautiful carving on walls. So this carving on wall, carving on any hard surface is what we call as inscriptions. Inscriptions contain very important information about that time period, because inscriptions are basically kind of notice, kind of message, which ruler used to give to the entire of his empire or the subjects. So in inscription, usually the name of the ruler is always mentioned, the time period is mentioned, and the message which he was giving is clearly mentioned. And the achievements, sometimes in inscription, we saw that rulers used to mention about their achievements, about the war or battle which they have won. So when we look into this, the previous slide here, on the left-hand side, there is a Tughlaq coin, and the right-hand side, there was the example of Akbar coin. So these two were the examples of coin. Just like that, I have put up here the example of inscriptions also. So these inscriptions, which you can see on your screen, is written on Persian language, because Persian was the official language during the time period of Delhi Sultans and Mughal Empire. Now we will look into the second important category of our sources, that is the literary sources. First is Imperial Decree. Now, what is this Imperial Decree? It is basically kind of farman or charter, kind of permit, which we call today. So in the earlier times, the ruler used to permit any sort of trading policy or any sort of agreement through farmans or charter. Like, for example, Aurangzeb has given farman to the Britishers. Jahangir has given the farman to the Britishers. Now, Jahangir was a ruler who has given first charter or farman to the Britishers to trade in India, because during his time, the Britishers first came to India to trade with this subcontinent. So it is a kind of permit, which official permit, which ruler used to issue. Second category is Chronicle. Now, what are the Chronicle? Again, Chronicles are the official document. Chronicles are basically book which was written by the court poet, who used to reside in the emperor's court only, and sometimes chronicles were written by the rulers itself. For example, you can see on your screen Babarnama, which is an autobiography of Babar only. Second is Tuzak-e-Jahangir, which was again an autobiography of Jahangir. Then third is Futat-e-Feroz, which was autobiography of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Now, the last example, which you can see on your screen, is Akbarnama. Akbarnama is a very, very important official document of the medieval time period, specifically when we talk about the Mughal Empire. And this Akbarnama was written by the Abul Fazl. Abul Fazl was the court poet of Akbar. He has written Akbarnama into 5 volumes, where he has very, very deeply described each and every detailed things about the Akbar's time period or the Mughal Empire during Akbar's time. So society, economy, polity, religion, every aspect is covered in this book. So that is why it becomes very, very important literary source to understand the time period, the reign of Akbar. Same goes with the previous example, and there are many other chronicles which played very, very crucial role to understand. It gives us insight about the time period of Mughal Empire, basically, or the Delhi Sultanate, where we got an ample of idea about the society, about the administration, about the economy of that time, because each and everything they used to record in this chronicle. When we come to the traveler's account, another important source, what is this traveler's account? Traveler's account is basically the people who visited to India. The travelers who came to India to explore this region, they found something unique. They found something which is not common in their own country. So they have written in their book each and every detail, which is something unique for them. Even the traveler's account, we can found these books more authentic and more neutral or the unbiased, because when we talk about the chronicles are basically the court poet. Earlier in the medieval time, the ruler used to commission them, and court poet used to reside in their forts or palaces, where they used to write each and every detail of the king on daily basis. So of course, if the person is getting commission, if the person is commissioned for writing, that person will never write negative points about the ruler. So that is why some historians suggest that we cannot completely rely on chronicles, because it can be biased also. But when we talk about traveler's account is completely unbiased. So why? Because travelers are not commissioned by any ruler. Neither they are writing for anyone else. Whatever they have written in their book, that is completely their individual perception, individual observation of the region. So one of the most important traveler's account from medieval India comes from Al-Biruni's book, Kitab-ul-Hind. Al-Biruni came to India from Central Asia during the time period when Mahmud of Ghazni was here in India. He attacked on India. And during that time period, there was the emergence of regional kingdoms also. Al-Biruni has written very, very brief description about the society of India during that time. So his book is very famous, which is Kitab-ul-Hind, where he has given the detailed description about the Indian society of that time. Then the second one is Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta was a Moroccan traveler who came into India during the time period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and his book's name is Rihilla. In his book, he has written very, very clear description about the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, all his mistakes, all his achievements he has covered in his book, and the book gives very, very detailed information about the time period of this Delhi Sultan. Third is François Bernier. François Bernier's book, Travels in the Mughal Empire. Now, François Bernier visited to India during the time period of Aurangzeb. And he has mentioned about Dara Sekho in his book, Aurangzeb in his book, the Shah Jahan's son, who fought for the authority, who fought for the reign, next successorship. So he has mentioned about all the administrative, economic, society, every aspect of the medieval time period during the 15th century, 13th to 15th century. When we come to the last source, which is music. Music is one of the most important, and we can say it gives an insight about the mindset of the ruler of the Mughal Empire. Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Aurangzeb. These Mughal emperors were one of the most famous for their interest towards music. They were a big patron of music. So Babur was a big patron of music, Humayun was a big patron of music, and Akbar, very, very one of the most famous emperor of Mughal Empire. He has commissioned one musician in his court, and his name was Tansing. So through this, we can get a clear picture, clear insight about that how much Akbar was interested in music. Aurangzeb, he was again very, very big patron of music. So during the medieval time period only, the Hindustani music culture has developed. It was a amalgamation, it was a mixture of Hindu and Muslim culture, or Hindu and Muslim music elements altogether. So this is all about the historical sources of medieval India. Thank you so much.